Hey, welcome everyone to the ARCHICAD User Monthly Webinar for November 2024. My name is Eric Bobrow, and it's my pleasure to see you all here. We've got 39 attendees right now, and probably going to go up to 50, 60, 70, something like that as we go further into the hour. Let me know that you can hear me and see the screen. Not that I'm showing too much, I'm just actually, yeah, am I showing? Yeah, I'm showing the ARCHICAD user website here, but type into the questions area. Let me know where you're calling in from, and of course, confirm that you can hear me. All right, so Ian from Scotland, excellent. So James Powers from Denver, Ray Kelly from Pennsylvania. All right, Jack from Santa Monica. All right, a lot of familiar faces and names. Okay, so please continue to fill that in because it's always fun. I'll just tell you what we're going to be doing today. So Archicad templates are a subject that is near and dear to my heart. It's something that early on, as I started to work with Archicad, I realized was so powerful and in general not taken advantage of as well as it could be. So we're going to be talking about the templates, what a template is for, and best practices, things that you should keep in mind, and tips for how to create and manage your own template. In that context, I'm going to be talking about MasterTemplate, which is a commercial product that I developed along with architect Scott Bulmer back in 2007. We've been developing it, Scott and I worked together for a few years regularly, and then he went off to just do his own design work. So I've been continuing to develop that ever since. We started with Archicad version 10, and now we're up to version 28. So I'll be talking a little bit about that, talking about project migration. So Archicad, well, I've been working with Archicad for 35 years this month. Can you believe that? 1989. So I just turned 70 this year, so half my life. So that was version 3.42, and I've lost count of how many versions there were because even though 28 minus 3 would be 25 versions, there were actually some years where they would have different versions like 3.42 and then 4.0 and then 4.1 and then 5, and they had teamwork was between 5 and 6, sometimes called 5.1 or something, and they had 8 and 8.1. So I think maybe around Archicad 9, they just decided that they would only have whole number increments. But regardless, that's just a little curiosity there. There is a process that Graphisoft goes through when they upgrade the software in terms of thinking, well, what would be useful? What are people requesting? What do we think would be good to include to resolve issues, challenges, provide new capabilities? What things are going to be the foundation that can be built on, et cetera. Because sometimes things that look like they would be simple to implement, well, they decide we're going to do it a little bit more thoroughly so that it prepares for the future. Now, sometimes that works great. Sometimes it causes some challenges when tech changes. We're going to be talking about that today because libraries of objects, doors, and windows have been a source of some pain for Archicad users over the years because Graphisoft has kept on changing the library numbering and the library element designations each version. Well, as of 28, they've standardized on what they call the global library, which does two things. It means that from here on out, they won't have to have new version numbers for every, window, door, or object. Table 127 or, single casement 27. It'll just say single casement or single casement USA in the case of, for US users. So in the long term, it'll make management easier in two ways in terms of library stuff. One is as all of us upgrade from one version to another, things will be just more automatic. We won't have to worry about migrating libraries in the same way. And also Graphisoft, they've set up something saying, all right, while US standards and English standards and Danish standards and German standards are all somewhat or quite different, metric versus imperial measures, as well as different styles in different countries, they figured out a way that they can have a single general library and then customize the defaults. Let's say, so a cabinet is 3 feet wide by default, but in metric, it might be 0.9 meters, or I'm not sure what the equivalent would be, but obviously 0.9 meters is not the same as 3 feet. It's, you know, something different, like 3 feet, 2¼ inches or whatever. So they figured out how to have different defaults using the same parts, and also how to handle, let's say in general, the different requirements or different countries, and saying, well, most of the stuff we can just adapt sizes and provide some flexibility with representation. And then there are some things that are very specific to the Japanese version or the Czech version, or, you know, different countries. And so there are some supplemental library resources for those countries in those areas, you know, electrical symbols and things like that. So we're going to take a look at all of that. I've gotten somewhat familiar with this. I wouldn't say I'm an expert yet. There are some things that I even, as of yesterday, was asking Graphisoft for guidance on, and they said, well, we're going to be creating some community notes, information, knowledge stuff for everybody coming soon, next week, next month, who knows. And I wrote back saying, well, here's what I think is going on, or what is this correct? And they said, I can't really answer that question. You'll have to wait till head office. This was the US support. You'll have to wait till the head office comes out with that. So, all right. I don't have a phone number for the calling the head office. So just like all of you, I'm out here as a user, obviously a very experienced one, but I'm waiting, you know, for some clarification. Now, all of that was a big preamble. Let's get going here. I do see Martin from Queensland, Australia, great, and Lou from wet Windsor, California. Yeah, we are having a winter storm here. Well, actually, I guess it's fall, but it's the first major storm here in California this year. Patrick from Seattle. All right, so we are up to 47 attendees. Let's get going. So I'll put this on screen here as just a quick guide. So I told you an overview here, and I said my background, 35 years working with Archicad. So tiny bit more about my background. Some of you know this. Got my degree in computer science in 1975, long before personal computers, and then just left the field entirely for a dozen years, became a performing artist, a professional dancer. When I came back, computers had started to be able to be used for graphic stuff, and I became familiar with desktop publishing and creating flyers and other Photoshop and all of those sort of things. And then by a fluke, I ended up helping on an architectural project. I'd gotten some training on another 3D tool called Archicad. And my boss said, you know, you really picked this up quickly. You know, I'm going to be creating a whole area, department of services for architects, and I'd like you to head it up. And I said, but I'm not an architect, and I don't know the CAD software, you know, other than this one. And he said, you'll learn, you're good. So, and some of you may know my brother, Michael Bobrow, was a fellow of the AIA. He passed away 3 years ago. So I always looked up to my big brother, the architect, and he was 15 years older than me. So 1989, I started working with Archicad. All right, so we talk about Archicad templates and what they're used for, what comes in the box, and a little bit about why MasterTemplate exists. So if I go into Archicad 28 here, all right, so I'm not going to attempt to show you all the new stuff about Archicad 28 for two reasons. One is I don't have time to delve into all of those things. The other is there's not a lot very visible that's new. Okay, there is a nice little help thing here. Where's my mouse? Why I can't? There it is. So this help thing allows you to flip through different things, and you can play this video here. I think you can make it bigger. Tells you a little bit about some of the new features. Keynotes are a pretty cool new feature there, and you can flip through these things about some of the new features. But overall, it's not a lot that has been added there. So I'm going to close this up. I think that you can bring this up again. If we go to the home thing, Archicad Home, this little home button, which was added into the main toolbar, allows you to go pick different projects. Here you can look at recent projects. You can say, I want to create a new one, so there are some simple controls here. And in the home button, I think, what is that? That's, latest news. Okay, so anyway, this is a sort of a cool thing here. And the learning one, online courses here. I don't know where. There's somewhere where you can actually play those little preview clips again. And whenever you start Archicad, it'll do that. All right, so I'm going to close the home area here. And obviously, this is just a blank project with 4 elevation markers and 2 section markers. And it's in the US version of Archicad. So very briefly, what is a template? It's the Archicad file that you use to start a new project. Now, this is the one that is supplied for US users, and of course it has just a few things drawn on here. It has in the navigator, it has a view map with some basic structures saying, hey, in schematic design, you might need to work on your site plan, you might need to work on floor plans. So each of these defines a view. What is a view? It's a way of looking at your model with certain layers, certain scale, etc., and a particular part. Are we looking at a plan, like the first floor or a second floor? Are we looking at an elevation section or whatever? So those are your views. It also, as a template, will have a layout book structured, in this case, in 2 groups of schematic design, cover sheet, and site plan, etc., as well as design development and construction documents, which they are assuming that you're going to have one set that once you've gone past concept, you're going to develop, and then you use it for both design development and for submitting for permit construction drawings. Okay, so far just talked about what's drawn there, not much. What's put into the navigator, quite a bit. All these views that define, well, what's the difference between a floor plan and a ceiling plan? Well, different layers. You show the ceiling layers and maybe the lighting and things like that on a ceiling plan, and you turn off some of the lower details of, maybe lower cabinets or other things. Certainly you turn off furniture. What's the difference between a floor plan and an electrical plan? Well, you turn on layers for electrical stuff, site plan, etc. So all of that's sort of carefully defined. If I go into the layer dialog, I just hit Command L or Control L, then we have in the template a bunch of layers, which are categories of things. And I know so many of you who are on these sessions know all of this by heart, but I always like going back to basics briefly to make sure that newer users understand things at least the way I see them. And even sometimes it's good when an experienced user goes, oh, I never realized something. Okay, all right. So we have the layers grouped, A for architecture, MEP, landscape for with the L, S for structural, etc. All right, now, what's the challenges here? In the old days, the layer names were often, in the US particularly, based on the AIA standards or the national CAD standards, and they were based originally on limitations in the CAD programs of the early days, like AutoCAD, which would have like 8 letters for file names, and I don't know, maybe there were 15-letter maximum for layer names. I don't remember, but you'd have A, wall, EXTR, because it would just barely fit in there. Nowadays, you can have, a walls exterior, you know, so it's a little bit more natural. But these names can get pretty long. We've got ones, annotation, markers, elevations, exterior. So what the name of these layers should be intuitive or easy to understand, so you know where to put things. And when you put them in the right place, they show up in the right drawings and they get hidden if they aren't needed on other types of drawings. So a good template will have a place for everything. Everything goes in its place. And this also means that each tool, like the wall tool, will be preset with, you know, walls exterior. Of course, we could say, no, I'm drawing an interior wall or a partition or a curtain wall. Okay, the slab tool will be on a layer that makes sense. So these are the defaults in the template. So when you click on a tool, you have something reasonable in terms of layer. And the slab, well, could be anything, but you know, it's saying 6 inches thick concrete slab on grade maybe, or something like that. At least it's something to start out with. And similarly with the wall tool, it is something in terms of what type of wall this is. It's a generic wall here. Now, these defaults can be changed. All you have to do is go into the wall tool, make a change saying, oh, I really want to draw with a thicker wall here, or I want to draw with a wall that has, you know, some more composites. You know, maybe it's a sheathing, waterproofing, and gypsum here. You know, so it's going to be a very complicated wall with many skins here. And then when I click OK, the default will update. So a template includes what's the starting point. Now, of course, for most of these tools, you're going to switch that all the time. So you're going to have favorites. So favorites are, as you probably know, go here saying, I have some favorites. Well, if I'm doing exterior walls, here are some ones that are in this template. So the favorites are built into a template. Of course, you can create new favorites saying, oh, well, they don't have a steel frame, you know, metal framed wall in here, and they don't have this type of wall and that type of wall. Add it to the, well, define it in ARCHICAD as a wall type and add it as a favorite, then you can quickly switch. So the idea here is that the template should make it easy for you to draw something reasonable just simply by sketching out a building footprint and, you know, partitions and things like that. So with MasterTemplate, this is of course only part of what's in a template, but let me just say, why did I create a new template? Well, Graphisoft has conflicting priorities, and it's nothing wrong with Graphisoft, but their job is to make a software that people love to use and also and are very productive, and also to have a software that is easy to sell, that people go, wow, I could learn that. That doesn't look too hard. That's just makes so much sense. Well, if you think about it, making something simple enough that people go, oh, I get it. That looks so easy, straightforward, you know, perfect. And the needs of a power user or any user who has a specific type of job, whether you do multifamily projects or you do, you know, just landscape design or whatever it is, everybody needs their own somewhat custom version. And Graphisoft, A, can't anticipate all the different types of projects you're going to do. B, can't possibly put in all of the stuff that everybody needs, so it's extendable. But C, they don't want to get it so heavy that new users go, oh my God, there's so much here, I can't figure it out. So they opted, particularly in the earlier days, for a more simplistic template. And one of the challenges, I was a reseller for 20 years, was that people said, well, where do I put this, like a chimney or, you know, something, a coffered ceiling, or, you know, this molding, or, you know, other accoutrements, things like that. And the answer was, well, you could put it on this layer, but then it's going to show up at the same time as something else. You should probably create a new layer for that. Okay, so typically people would create new layers, and sometimes they wouldn't need to, but they just say, I don't know what layer to put it on, I'm going to create one. Things get to be a little bit of a mess. Same thing with the views. In the older days, the number of view types, for floor plan, ceiling plan, electrical plan, structural plan, there weren't as many as most people needed. So you had to create a new view. You had to create new layer combinations for those views, and so on. So with MasterTemplate, back in 2007, having worked with Archicad for 18 years at that point, I said to myself, and I discussed with other expert users as well as novice users, hey, would it make sense to create a template that has all of the smart stuff that I know about or that I can learn about? And so that's what MasterTemplate was intended for. Put in as much as one could, still keeping it approachable, but so that users in general don't need to add very much to it. I mean, you can always customize it, but it would have much more of the basics in there. So that's what MasterTemplate is about. Now, I've gone over just a little bit, waving my hands with the, what do you call it, how the template is set up. One of the things that I decided way back when was that it's one thing to just talk about layers, and it's another thing to actually see them in use. And so, for example, if I switch from floor plan here to furniture plan, and we have something to look at, we can say, oh, well, when we're doing the furniture plan, not only do we see the furniture popped in here, but we turn off the grid lines, and we turn off, other things because they're not needed here. Or when I go to a structural framing plan, what are we going to see here? Hopefully this comes up. Well, so we can see some things about the roof structure above here. Yeah, I don't think I have too much in terms of structural framing in this one, but of course, if we go to the site plan, we're going to see other things, so the footprint of the building, the roof, etc., some representation of the site there. Okay, so seeing that and then going, all right, well, in the layer dialog, in the site plan, well, we do have dimensions there, and we do, of course, have the stairs and landings, and we have the walls, but we only have the exterior walls. We don't have the interior walls, etc. So then, of course, it makes sense to see what's going on, and you can then see what's going on when we change it from site to site drainage. What did it do here? Or when we have it, let me just make this wider so we can see the names here. When you change it from floor plan to floor plan fire separation, a couple of things that show up indicating fire information, etc. So by having that sample project, and this is just a little California bungalow here, so nothing too fancy at all. But this, what do you call it, allows one to study it. Now this is a project built in MasterTemplate. I've maintained it over the years, developed it, adding more features into it as Graphisoft added new things to it. But this is only, one part of what makes MasterTemplate useful, and one part of what why I continue to use it for teaching purposes, because there's all sorts of stuff built in that I can demonstrate. Now, I'm going to jump around here, but I'm going to talk about project migration and things. So if I go, let me say, open an older project. Actually, let's just take a look at libraries just before we do that. For those of you who may be less familiar, let's go to this other, so this is the US template right out of the box. If I go to the File menu, Library Manager, we're going to see something quite different in the Library Manager for this than ever before. There's been an embedded library in Archicad for many years, probably since version, I don't know, could have been 8 or 10, somewhere in there. It allows you to have custom parts that you create specifically for a project that are sort of isolated or just from other parts that you might use in other projects, and go along with the project if you copy it from one computer to another. Now, the Archicad 28 library here, up till this point, the library manager would say Archicad 28 library and maybe Archicad 28 MEP library, and possibly something called Archicad 28 migration libraries. So they were all specific to a version, 28, 27, 26, or whatever. They were broken up into a main folder of the Archicad library, a supporting folder, the MEP for mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, and possibly a migration library which supported older parts that were replaced in later libraries, and therefore they worked a little differently, so Graphisoft contained them. We don't see that anymore. We do see Archicad legacy objects, so that would be roughly the equivalent of the migration library. So these are things that they decided not to carry forward, but might still be needed for some people. And then they have all of these library packages. So it is no longer, these are no longer folders. These are individual files of all different sizes. And I don't fully understand it, but I'll explain what I know. They're grouped, of course, by, let's say, category. Like we have couches and sofas would be one type of furniture. Chairs would be another one. Cabinets and shelves, well, some of them are fixed, so they're, fixtures, and some are maybe movable here. But then we go into electrical symbols. Okay, well, that's 2D symbols here. And we go into things like, what do we have here? Wall extras. Where are door and windows? Door and windows. Okay, so doors and windows, those are structural, obviously, shown on virtually all plans or all drawings here. So, and do they have structural, I don't know, steel construction? Okay, all right. So these are all groups. All right. Now, most of them have the names of a category of things, right? Stairs and railings, etc. Okay. Some of them may have a designation of being in the USA, like Doors and Windows USA. So we have our own standards here that are somewhat different than other countries, and certainly all of the sizing of cabinets and doors and windows and things would be in standard feet and inches for us, so 3 feet rather than 0.9 meters or things like that. So in versions around the world, if you're in Scotland like Ian is, it would look very similar, except you wouldn't have Doors and Windows USA. You might have Doors and Windows INT for international English ones. If you're in Australia, you might have Doors and Windows AUS for Australia, things like that. And there are some ones for, as I mentioned, Japanese and German and things like that that are specific for those. But most of these are worldwide, and they just have some ways of controlling the defaults so that when you go place it, it's a sensible nominal size that makes sense for your context. All right, so what are all of these things? Where are these? Well, if we look in the fine details here, it's in the Archicad 28 folder in a folder called Archicad Library Packages. So let's just go find that here. So if I go and find my Archicad 28 folder, so there is something called Archicad Library 28, but it's in actually Archicad Library Packages. That's where all of these things are. And you'll see that there are ones that say KOR Korean, I guess, NOR Norway, probably Russia, Sweden, or Swedish English, I think, I'm not sure. DACH would be, I guess, Deutsche, Austria, so German, Germany, Austria, Czech, and Hungary, something like that. I'm not quite sure. Maybe the C is something different because here's, I think, Czech. Any event, so we're not loading all of these. We are loading annotation USA, and probably we're loading Door Windows USA. So these are all supplied in the ARCHICAD 28 installation. Now, what's in the ARCHICAD Library 28? Look at this. These are all ARCHICAD 27 things. So what Graphisoft decided to do is saying, hey, it used to be that you would just say, load the new library and the supports for the older stuff, and it would migrate the components you had already drawn, let's say a single door drawn with the 26 library. When you put it into 27, it would say, all right, I'll use the single door in the 27 library because it's exactly the same, it just has a new number. Well, they decided, let's not do that. Let's make a change here. And then, so if you say, when you open a project file, I'd like to migrate the libraries, it will load the new library here, but it's actually the old one. So it is crazy. And then if you do that, you'll also have support for the migration libraries. So let me just demonstrate that migration here. So I'm going to take this in a process. And of course, I could take any project, but I'll just take the ARCHICAD 27 or MasterTemplate 27 sample project. So we are looking at something similar, but just a little different structure. So MasterTemplate 27 sample project here, this one, okay, it's version 27. I'm going to say launch a new instance here, say open it. So this would be like opening any 27 project. It would also be very much like opening a 26 project, or 25 or 24, going back all the way, I think, to ARCHICAD 10. You can open an older project. Now, when you open it in the latest version of ARCHICAD, there'll usually be this question that says, do you want to any assistance migrating it? Do you want to use the old libraries here, which ARCHICAD is fully capable of doing, or would you like to migrate it? Now, it used to be that migrating it and you were sort of done. Now you have two choices. So I'm going to say migrate it. And what it will do is it will load that ARCHICAD 28 library, which has the 27 parts and the migration support, and it won't have the new stuff. So it'll look much the same, but let's take a look behind the hood here. So here it looks like exactly the same thing. If I select this door, it says D127. Now I am in ARCHICAD 28. Okay, so it did not migrate it to the door 28. If I go to that other version of the project that I had open and I select this door, it is D1 USA. So I swapped that for the new global library that does not have numbers. And I'm going to show you how that process works. So now I'm back in the one that was just simply migrated without any additional work. If I go to the library manager, we'll see, look at that, very simple, clean. This is what we're used to over 20 years of migrating projects. You have what it looks like the latest library, a support for any older parts, and also the MEP for there. But if I look at the ARCHICAD Library 28, what does it have in it? It has these things from 27 here. Now, it functions. Why did Graphisoft do this, and what are the trade-offs? Well, if you have a project that is well underway and you just want to take advantage of 28 because it's maybe a little faster or has keynotes or things like that, you can just migrate the project and bingo, looks fine, functions pretty well. Don't do the steps that I'm going to show you in a few minutes of swapping out your parts. But if you're early in the project or you're creating a template and you want it to be compatible with 28, 29, 30, etc. down the line, then you want to use the new library where it says D1 USA as opposed to D1 27 or D1 USA 27 or something like that. So let me show you how that is done if you want it. So as I said, this is loading this simple thing. It didn't have all of that long list of library packs, okay? Now, by the way, this has some warnings here. Let's just take a look at what it says. It says there are some duplicated parts, okay? And that duplicated parts is because I think the migration libraries, which support older ones, and my master template embedded libraries have some duplicates. That's primarily where those duplicates are. And substituted objects, it basically, has a bunch of things that were substituted. But these warnings are just advisory. They're not going to change the function. All right, so if I wanted to take a project from this fully functional state to, or a template to something that's, I'm going to say, future-proofed. In other words, it's able to be used or will be able to be used over the years with, much less management. I'm going to show you that process. Now, let me see, there are some comments here. So let me see what here. So I do see Carmina from England, Morgan from Camarillo, Martin Kelly, Queensland. So these are all greetings when we first got started, and Doug from Brooklyn. Okay. So Patrick Paul says, can you add the European window package to the US template? I believe so. I have not tried that. We can try that a little later. All right, so when he asked, how would you do this? Well, we'll see. If I wanted to migrate a real project so that it was really set up for the longer term, then I would go through this process. With a project that's relatively early on, it's going to be very quick. With a project that is well developed, it will take longer because you have to do more swapping one by one. And for many projects that are well developed, it just doesn't make any sense. You're going to, finish submitting it in the next 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, whatever. Why worry about it? You can always open up the older projects using their own libraries. You don't have to swap. How would we work with this? So I'm going to go add. Now, when you add in the library manager, in general, what you can do is you can pick a folder and say, I want to open it, and it'll add it to the list. I already have this. Let me just say Archicad Migration Library is old, and I'll say open it. It now gets added to this list. Now, I don't really need that one, but that would support Archicad 10, 11, 12. I think the migration libraries maybe start at 13 or 14. I'm not sure. If we say what is in there, I'll reload and apply. We'll just see, just for clarity's sake. So this won't cause any problems. It's just loading some additional supplemental definitions. So the old ones, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, oh, and 10, 10 through 16, they're old ones. Now, if I go to the migration libraries here, those are 17 and above. So they've segmented it that way. I think it used to be that the main migration ones were from 13 or 14 up, but they've obviously, just broken it up saying, yeah, this is within the last 10 or 12 years. All right, anyway, I can leave that in there, not a problem. Let me add something else. There is this thing called Archicad Library Packages. That's a folder that has all of these lib packs or library packs. I thought, hey, I could take this and say, open it. It gets put in here, Archicad library packages, but it does not actually function correctly, at least as far as I know. I'll reload and apply. It does not give me access to the new global library. Why? I don't know why they don't allow you to do that. I did see one tech note somewhere where it looked like you could say, oh, force it to load things within a folder that have library packages, but right now it doesn't seem to do that. So, and I'll just demonstrate this. If I go into, let's say, door tool, we're going to see here in the loaded libraries, these are the 27 ones that we migrated into. There is some stuff from 11 and 12. We don't see the global library, which would be like D1. If I search for D1 here, we will not see, we'll see D1 for Archicad 11 and 12. We'll see all of these things for 27, well, a bunch of stuff for 11 and 12 mixed in there, which is why you don't really want to load it, just because you're going to have a lot more if you don't need it, because you're going to have a lot more confusion there. So let me just go in and we'll just remove the migration libraries old. So I'm going to remove that, reload here, and then we'll go on into how do you get the library packages if you do want to swap out things. So it is now, I say okay, and we go into the door tool, and I say D1. You can see these are only the 27 ones here. All of them have 27. There are none that say D1 USA or here. Now there are some ones single door. Yeah, they still don't say. There's nothing that has the USA. Here's sliding folding panel. Oh, now here is, it's taking longer to come up. Let me just see, D1 USA, does it have that? No, it doesn't. All right, so I would obviously want to swap it for the simplest type of door, like this, but it doesn't have that there. So how do we get the access to the library packages? In this case, I go to the File menu, Library Manager, repeat, and then say Add. But instead of adding the library packages folder, I open this up and I select all of these. Oh, except that I probably don't want to have the Swedish furniture. I probably don't want to have the Swedish, Japanese, German countries for doors and windows, and I probably don't want to have Japanese. Now, it's not a problem to have these, but they are not relevant, and so you can go through and find anything that has a country name that looks not relevant, and deselect those. So here's the Swedish one here, and annotation, all of these ones in here. Okay, so I'm deselecting these. Okay, so I think this is probably pretty good here, and I'll just say open. And what it'll do is it add them to the list here. Oops, it looks like I got 2D symbols SWE. Let me remove that one. Let's see if I missed anything here. I'm not sure what, escape plans, NS3925, I have no idea, probably don't need these, but we'll leave them in there. All right, so I've said that. I'm just going to say okay, which will reload and apply and then take me out. So you can see it's got a little clock icon. It's loading this stuff, relatively quickly. Now, when I go into the door tool, and I say, hey, I might want to switch. Here's D1 USA. There it is. Okay, in fact, all of these things that say D1 and have the letter USA, if I just say D1, then you can see here's the ones that say D127. So what I'm going to do now that I've loaded this properly is I'm going to go and swap this door here. Now there is a little challenge here, and that's part of why I make a living helping people with Archicad, is because there's things that are not obvious and things that, it helps if you understand. But this part is not hard as long as you know what to look for. if I select this door, look at how it's drawn. We've got the actual door swing delineated, and you can see actually, I don't know if that's, maybe it's a recessed panel. I'm not sure. We've got all of this information in terms of the casing here. I'm going to go in here and use what is called parameter transfer. So what is parameter transfer? When you have certain settings in any part, whether it's a door or a cabinet, and you want to switch to another part in the library, if you don't transfer the parameters, it'll just pick up the default. So you might have a single cabinet that's 2 foot 3 inches wide, and when you switch it to a different type of cabinet, it now becomes 4 feet wide, or whatever the default was for that. But if you use, and same thing with a door, whether it's 2 foot 6, 2 foot 8, 3 feet, 3 feet 6, or whatever, and the door style, you know, is it a French door? Is it a flat panel door, recessed panels, etc. So this one you can see is actually somewhat fancy. Where's my cursor? Come on there. You can see this is somewhat fancy. It's you know, got glazing in there and some dividers. I guess it's prairie style, perhaps, is the term that they use. So when I switch this, if I were to switch this to D1 USA, here, D1, here's D1 USA. If I click on this, looks like a totally different door. Oh God, now I have to manually go and change it to the right size and the right style. No, no, no. Okay, so what are we gonna do? I'll just cancel out of that and go back in and say, all right, I'd like to go down to D1 USA and hold down 2 keys. If you're on Mac, it's Command Option, the 2 keys next to the space bar. And you end up getting this syringe. If you're on Windows, it's Control Alt. So I've now got this, and looks, just need to make sure you're on the right one. Now when I click, whoops, no, it was D127. I want to be on D1. It moved around. A little annoying. Come on. I guess it loaded more of these. Why am I not seeing? I had D1 USA. In fact, I can say, hey, I know that I'm looking for D1 USA. That'll make a smaller one. Here's D1 USA. So I'll use the syringe tool. When I click on it, you'll notice that the name will change, but the appearance will be either identical or very close to identical. I'll click on this. Okay. Looks like similar, but the opening lines changed. It does say D1 USA. All right, so got to fix those opening lines because that indicates which way it's swinging. Now there are 2 standards. Sometimes you have, you know, the 2 lines or you know the separated ones at the hinges, but sometimes some people or some countries or areas will prefer to have just the single point as where it swings from. That's actually controlled in the model view options. So I'm going to show you that in a second. And it's global, so once I fix it once, we won't have that issue. But then the other thing is, look at the plan. Notice that we've lost the swing, the door panel, the detail, as well as all the details here. Let me just click OK, and we'll see, oh, that looks totally different. If I undo, you can see what it was. Here I redo. Okay, all right. Well, I'm going to go back in because after switching it here, I need to make one more change for most of the USA parts. Certainly a majority, maybe it's 90% of the USA parts. You need to go in here to floor plan and section. Sometimes it's called 2D representation on the floor plan. And you need to change the 2D detail level from schematic, which obviously is very simplified like this, and you need to change it to either, if you want it always to be full, you can do that, and here we can see all that detail, or preferably by MVO. MVO stands for Model View Option. So that means that globally you can say, I would like for the site plan to have the doors represented with a schematic, simple representation, whereas on construction documents, I want it to be detailed, and maybe there's an intermediate level that you would use for presentation drawings, things like that. Okay, so I'm going to say by MVO. Now, by MVO here will solve the problem, but right now it doesn't because the model view option for this project hasn't been tweaked. So you saw how if I told it manually just to do full, it would work, but let's make it by model view options. So now I need to go into the model view options and say, you know what, please follow these directions. This is how I would like things to be drawn. So I'll say, okay. So we still have this little issue here, and I'm going to go into model view options. So this is the little pop-up that allows you to switch between model view options, and then this is the pop-up or the button that brings up model view options. So we are in a model view option that we use for some of the drawings called ConDoc, Construction Documents. Now you'll notice that there's some images of what doors will look like. It says show the full door with a marker. So that means you're going to have the marker that shows the number of the door, possibly the size of the door, depending upon which type of marker you have. But down here, there's some other things that affect this. Now, we were in ARCHICAD Library 27. It said if you had a 27 library part, then you want let's see, where is it? Door and window symbols. Oh, okay, detail level of door and window symbols, USA. That's what we're going to be touching. And it's actually in here, detail. So this is where it was, when I migrated the project, it carried this on. Since we're loading ARCHICAD Library 27, this setting says, hey, draw the doors for construction documents like this, whereas when we do a site plan, do a simple one. Okay, all right. So this ConDoc here, this was working, but remember now we have the door and window USA, or of course, if you were using the International Library, you'd have that. I need to go in here and say, oh, you know what? When I'm doing a full construction document set, I need to make it with full detail. I might as well make the windows full detail as well for ConDoc. Now I'll have to go through all of these. There are, in MasterTemplate, there are maybe about 15 or so. Your template may have a different number, but each one of them you need to go and just sort of check what's the style you want for a site plan versus a floor plan, etc. So having made that change, that's going to solve one problem. The other thing has to do with the opening line in 3D and section elevation. The line orientation, this is handles, and this is hinges. And I noticed that that was reversed from what I was used to. So I'm going to click on this and say, when we're working with the new door and window, please use this standard here. And that's for, doors and windows. And there's some other settings for how arrows would show for openable things that slide, right? And the line type for the opening side, do you want that? Some people would like a dashed line, for opening lines. I'm going to leave it solid for now. I'll just say okay. So these are the two changes. I've switched in detail level of door and window symbols USA to tell it, hey, for construction documents, I want high level of detail and I want the hinges here. I say okay. Now look, hey, it's back to what we had. Now if I switch this to a site plan, notice, beautiful. The model view option allows me to switch the level of detail. Now on a site plan, I also might want to have another setting that says, hey, go and in the what is called graphic overrides, I might want to have a ConDoc site plan here. And now we're seeing the doors at the walls with just a simple line. So this is, I think this is a grid line here where the framing is. So how do we get that? If I go back to the view map, the first floor plan, that says we're in construction documents. But when I'm in a site plan here, we can see how that switches both the model, both the graphic override to condoc site plan and the model view option. All right, so I didn't have to make any changes here because they were referencing what was in my project already, the graphic override combinations and the model view options there. Oh, it's interesting. So when I hover over it, it says, this is what it's about, show me how, and it probably plays a little video. So that's good. That's new, I think, in 28. All right. So now that I've fixed that, let's just go back to the floor plan. Now I can proceed to all of these other things. So I'll select a window. Again, at W1 casement 27. I need to go in here and say search for W1 casement. And now here's a plain casement as opposed to ones with awnings and things like that. And I'm going to find the new one that's comparable with the USA. Hold down the syringe tool, click on it. See how it changes to the simple version? Because I have to tell it that, that the floor plan and section should use not schematic. No, thank you. I want based on model view option. Look at that. Say OK. So this is what it looks like if I undo. Slight difference here, and there is an issue here. Now redo. So I have checked in 3D and elevation. It appears that the window is exactly the same as it, as the one that I swapped it out for. But on plan, you notice that the casing here has moved in. If I undo this, see here, this is covering up the transition to where the frame is. And when I do the swap, it's moving it here, which I don't think this makes any sense at all. Now, I've played around with making this a different size. Here, this is controlled in, I think it's under casing here. So this is the width of the casing, and this is supposed to be how recessed it is back from that. Let me just try putting in, oh, this is the inside here. This is 1 inch in. It says it should be recessed back 1 inch, but it's not doing it. Let me take it back 3 inches. No problem there, but take a look at what happens when I do this. So we're gonna say okay and look at that. No change. So I believe, I'll just undo that. I believe that and if I just want to demonstrate that there is something functional there, if I go into the casing and I say, let's make this outside casing to be 3 inches here, that does get wider. You can see, but look at it. It pushed it in there. So the thing pulling it back and notching out, let's say, the siding is not functional. But in elevation, it actually looks correct. So that's a bug. I'm going to report it to Graphisoft. I just discovered it this past week with the help of Ray. So Ray Kelly, who helped me get MasterTemplate 28 prepared, he said, there's something's funny here. So, all right. Now, we've now made this W1 casement USA. How long would it take if you had a real project that was just schematic level like this? I could go around, do all the doors and windows, do all of the cabinets and furniture and stuff like that. And, maybe it would take half an hour. Maybe it would take an hour. I don't know. Depends upon how big a project it is. If it's a hospital, of course, you wouldn't want to do that. But if it was a little house, you could. And that's what I did in MasterTemplate. So if we switch over to this one, which I started the rework and Ray continued that if I select this, doesn't have the 27, it has the USA. If I go to the toilet here, it's WC, not WC27, etc. So we went through that. So with a normal type project, you could do it if it was early on and you just wanted to say, all right, this is going to go on for a while. I might as well use the new library. You could do this. Now, what happens if you have a template? Well, in a template, you're going to have some things that are there for convenience that relate to library parts. In MasterTemplate, we have a huge set of materials that I call the interactive legend of visual favorites. And some of you may know this because you use MasterTemplate or you've seen my presentations on it. For those of you who don't know it, it's a kit of parts that you can go refer to and say, oh, I'll need one of those. And you eyedrop it, and then you go back to your work area and you place it in, or you inject it using the syringe. And there's a whole lot of them. I'm going to demonstrate that in a second. Well, there were something like 450 parts in the interactive legends. It took many hours to swap those, but we've got the USA one virtually done. I'm about halfway through, or a little over halfway through the international one. So I'm going to just show that to you in a moment and talk about some of the other limitations that we noticed as we did this. So before I go on, I'm going to take a sip and open it up for some questions. So I see Kevin Young has joined us more recently from Hong Kong. All right, so we're spanning Asia with Hong Kong. We've got Australia, of course, North America, and some people from England and Scotland and things like that. And we've got 52 people on the line, so respectable. So open for questions or comments. And how many of you, I'm going to ask you, how many of you are working with 28? And then how many of you have migrated projects into 28 or your template? And just like to get some feedback on that. So if I put you all to sleep. Okay, so Patrick says not working in 28 yet. Jerry Sperling says still in 24. Okay, Martin Kelly still on 27. Okay, and then Jack, I'm in 28, haven't purchased a template. Okay. Paul, working with Archicad 28 and migrated a couple of projects from 27, still haven't gotten to keynotes. Okay. And then several of you, Kelly, Kevin, and Morgan say 27. All right. Well, 28 was just released in October, so it's been out barely a month. Obviously, some of you are back in earlier versions, 25, like for Pamela. So Tom Nietzsche, I'm not, I don't know how that you pronounce it, says 28 all in. Tom, love your enthusiasm, all in. Let's have a chat here. So let me open up your line. Hopefully you have a microphone. Let's see here. So I'm going to unmute your line.
Can you hear me?
Yep. Mm-hmm. So you're all in.
So I started over the course of the last week converting our 27 template to 28. And actually having gone through it, I think I found a little bit more efficient ways to do it. But so far, so good, with one exception, and that is drawing titles on layout sheets. I don't know if you've gotten into that at all, or if anybody has, but I'm finding that transferring parameters from, say, a floor plan drawing to an elevation or section drawing, just for me, for some reason, just does not work.
Okay, well, that would be interesting to troubleshoot with you, because maybe there's just some simple setting that you're missing there. I haven't tested that, but So if I were to take this drawing, for example, and change the settings. So you're talking about for the drawing title.
Exactly.
All right.
Right.
So let's just switch first of all to a different drawing title. So I'll just say, hey, instead of using NCS here, I'm just going to do a simple title 27. Okay, so you can see now that name there. I'll then eyedrop this and say, hey, I'd like to use that for this one. So I'll inject with the syringe tool here, and that worked fine. So that was the simplest case I could think of, just switching to a whole one. So let me see, what types of change were you doing that?
Well, actually two ways. One of which was exactly that. When I drop the parameters from one drawing to another, no change would occur. And also, if you probably have favorites for your titles, if I were to select one drawing and just choose a different favorite, again, nothing would change.
Okay, all right. So one of the things in terms of favorites, I have not actually gotten to the favorites part. I saw that there was a little utility that Graphisoft provides or will provide. I haven't looked to see if I can get access to it. That it converts favorites from an older library or older versions into the current ones. So I haven't looked at that. So if you are able to supply to me a file with an issue like you just mentioned, and just we can have we could do it towards the end of the session, or we could do it just as a one-on-one thing, because I'm always curious, like I want to be able to guide people well. So you report an issue, I want to either understand it so I can warn people about it, or maybe I help you work around it and you go, oh, I didn't realize I had to click this, so.
Yeah, I'd love to do that.
Yeah. You mentioned something about a more efficient way of doing something.
Yeah, mostly, and again, transferring parameters. I was reluctant, or I thought I found some difficulty in mounting the global library along with an Archicad 28 library, which is really a 27 library. But once I got that figured out, it was pretty straightforward, changing and all of my favorites. And I only found out about the tool as I was fairly far into it. I did try to download it. I was unsuccessful in installing it. Not exactly sure why. I have a feeling it may be set up for Intel Macs. I don't know.
Okay, I'm on a silicon chip Mac, so I would have the same issues as you. All right, well, we'll compare notes on things, and perhaps either later on or separately, I can have a little thing. If you do get a chance while the session is going, just to get a simple file. I mean, it could be a full project file, but a file where it could be simply demonstrated. Well, look here, I'm trying to transfer the parameters of this title title to there. So I won't. I'll continue on with my discourse here, and then maybe we'll return to that later, or I'll just be in touch. So,
okay, sounds good.
All right. So I see Carmina said, I've recently started to use 28. Unfortunately, the plugins for Twinmotion isn't updated for 28. So that's too bad. So just a general note, I'm in Archicad 28, just to say we're in Archicad 28. So the file is in 28 format there. If I wanted to save out in Twinmotion, so there would be a few different ways I would think of testing it. I have not looked at it. If worse came to worse, I would go save as, and then say save as a solo project in 27, and then in 27 use the export. Now, there are some limitations there. If you are using the new global libraries, they probably, those parts won't go backwards. So that would be, an issue, saving it back in an earlier version. all the library parts like windows and doors and stuff would disappear. So I wouldn't do that. Now, in terms of twin motion, if I go to 3D, so I have a 3D view. Let's take a 3D here. Okay, let's say axo of this project. All right, so here's a little project there. Oh, and I'm in somehow interesting. Look, this should have detailed doors and windows. Oh, and this is exactly, well, let's see what is going on. So I'm in presentation, so I have a model view option for presentation, which does some things in terms of the way things are represented. Well, it turns out that if we go to the presentation for doors and window symbols, the floor plan, hey, well, maybe I do want it to be simplified. Let's just leave that. But what about in 3D? Saying, make these schematic. And I say, well, for presentation, I want to see the full door and window, right? I want to see all of that. I don't want, there's a difference between a presentation schematic and presentation. So I'm going to put it in here. And in fact, I'll do the same thing here. I'll say if we're in schematic mode, I'm going to have a simplified version of the doors and windows. But if I'm just saying present it, I'm just going to turn off the dimensions, and I'm going to turn off the grid lines, and I'm going to turn off other things that we don't need for presentation purposes, but let's just show the doors and windows in full. All right, so I have to go through all of these and make sure that the detail level of door and window symbols is all updated to be appropriate because it was set for the 27 one there. So let me just say okay. And now you can see what I was expecting there. Okay. Now, when you're saving something out for twin motion, if I go File, Save As, do we have a twin motion export? Okay. I don't see, what do they call it? I can't remember now what it's called. Now, it's possible that you could save it in one of these other FBX or some other interchange format, and that Twinmotion could open it. But in general, you want to have the one that's native that'll allow you to sort of update periodically. So that would be another workaround there. Anyway, obviously, if you're using Twinmotion as a major part of your work with clients to create presentation things, then you'd want to keep your project in 27 until that's there. Let me just open up Carmina's line in case there's some other interesting comments. Carmina, your line's open. Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi there. Yeah, so I didn't know that this plugin is not updated, and that's why I was very eager to start on 28. But that's a very interesting workaround that you showed me. I don't know why I didn't think of saving on 27 and then continue working on 27 because it's still good enough for the time being.
Yeah, if you didn't do this manual swap of parts, of library parts, then you won't have that issue. They'll still be in 27 format. When you save back, they should go. Of course, if you put new elements, whether it's a door or a furniture or a fixture with the new library, then you would have some issues. But if you just migrated the project from 27, then you can probably migrate it back, save as, and go
Actually,
back.
I've started a new one in 28. I kind of avoid migrating from one version to another, especially when there are larger projects, because I never know what can happen with a migration. So I kind of keep them in the same version that I've started. But I've started a new one in 28, and then I realized when I wanted to work on Twinmotion that I didn't have the plugin. But yeah, it's okay. And yes, the libraries are still on 27, so I haven't done the library migration as you just showed me now, and I think it's really interesting what you are showing here. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Well, thanks, Carmina. Appreciate
Thank
your,
you.
sharing your experience.
Pleasure.
Okay, so here we have 3D, and I brought up the model view options for, we need to go through each of those. So fortunately, that's just once for the project, and it affects all the library parts. And then what do you call it, for your template, of course, that would just be once. Now, let me show you in terms of master template, what we're talking about with the legends and the level of work, or the amount of work that is required for something like master template. So if I go to the legends here, so I call them the interactive legends of visual favorites, and I'll just open this up. Okay, so these are, hundreds of parts and a bunch of sample elements. So in the upper section here, we have different wall types, and you can basically eyedrop a wall, and now the wall is set to that particular wall type, or eyedrop this wall, and you can see how that changes as I do that. So these are all different wall types that you can quickly get access to. So of course you could have favorites with it, but the favorites tend to be a linear list, whereas this is something you can zoom in around, read the description. It can be a little bit easier here. We have some simpler walls here for what I call a chipboard model. Just a very simple one. Now we have groups of elements. So for kitchen parts, so each one of these elements had to be swapped over like I just demonstrated, and Ray put in the bulk of the work on this project file. So every single one of these, including these room groupings, here we have a quick kitchen, and the idea in Master Template, and this is something you should consider in your own template or your own resource library, is taking something like, hey, this is a well put together kitchen. We'll just take a look at what this is. I'm going to go take a marquee around it, say show what's in the marquee in 3D here, and this is sort of like your sample kitchen in a kitchen supply place, right? Okay, well, you can have as many of these as you want, whether it's one with an island or an open concept or ones with different style cabinets. Typically, I would recommend that you do this for any project that you think, oh, that came out really nicely, and I might want to have a similar kitchen to that in another project, okay? So you would basically copy all the stuff from one project, put it into another, copy it over, paste it into another file, and have access to it. Now, you could always go back to the project, but then you have to think, well, is it the Smith project or the Jones project? Oh God, and that's in Archicad 26. So, so there are complications. So having a library of room groupings, of quick rooms, as I call them, can be useful. So in Master Template, these are definitely usable, and they're also a good example. Just saying, hey, we can have a kitchen, a bedroom, a dining room, a bathroom. We can have in the commercial space, here's a lobby reception, here's an office and a conference room, all of these things with just a bunch of furniture and some basic, context of walls. Or we can have things like public restrooms. Here's some stuff with, this is a handicapped toilet with the grab bars and things like that. All right, so the idea is that, hey, you could bring this in and saying, hey, let's do this, but we're going to have actually extra stalls. So it just becomes much easier to fit out your project when you have these things. But all of these require swapping out. Now, I happen to have the other file that I was working on. This is in the international version, int 27, in 28. And if I say, I have a search right now, this is available in what's called Find and Select. Shortcut is Command F or Control F. And in find and select, I can say, I would like to search for all types of things, or just for walls, or just for whatever. In this case, I'm saying search for anything that's an object where the library part name contains 27, and I'll say plus. So these are the ones that have not been converted yet. All right, so I have converted all of these and all of these guys, etc. But you know what we have to do here, and I'll just demonstrate it here. And this is where it actually is a little different in the international version, at least from what I saw. If I select this fridge, it's a double door refrigerator, go in here. It says it's refrigerator side by side 27. I'm just going to do a search for REFR, so that quickly narrows it down. Here's the 27 one, here's the new one. When I inject this here, looks much the same, except that the detail level changed. So this is much the same. I have to go to 2D representation and change it from simplified to by MVO, model view option. And now you can see it's back to the way it was. If I undo and redo, you may notice that this label, when I undo, so this label actually is showing the library part name. And this is, of course, now I've changed it. So when I had, because this is a file for reference, we've got all these names. You would never put this onto a construction document because these are the names of the library parts, not the names of the manufacturer, etc. here. So that's exactly the same for the international one. I think what was different was some of the stuff, let's see, some things I didn't have to do the 2D representation. So if I select this, this is a bed 01, 27, and I go bed, and I can't just do bed, there's a bunch of them, just do pet bed 01, and now I have, these are the matching ones, and I can inject it, and it looks the same. I don't have to go find the 2D representation here. Well, actually, we could switch this over, but the model view option for this didn't really change there. But you may find that in some cases you don't have a 2D representation there. But so this bed says bed 01, doesn't have the 27 after it. So that's some of the basic notes on migrating projects. You can simply, of course, you have a choice of just saying, I still have 27 or 25 on my computer. My computer runs it just fine. I'm just going to keep working on this project, submit the drawings, put it to bed, it'll stay in 27. You could say, well, I like keynotes in 28. I like this new feature. Let me migrate it to 28, but use the old library. Very efficient, works fine. You can still use keynotes, etc. Or you say, this is just early in the project. I want to have it set up so that in the next year, I won't have any issue with libraries and things like that. So you could go and take 10 minutes or 2 hours and swap library parts around. Now, in the, once we have it done, and I'm going to demonstrate this with the one that was pretty clean. This is Archicad, the 27 sample project. No, that's actually unmigrated. This is the sample project USA in Archicad 28, version 4B. So version 4 was what Ray sent me. Version 4B, I've done a little bit more tweaking here, and I'll keep on doing it. Well, let me just save this. I don't know if I've done anything useful here, but I've certainly looked at things. And let's go to the library manager and say, well, what happens if we get rid of this library? And in fact, all of these, I'm going to remove them. Now, there's a bunch of warnings because of duplicate stuff here, duplicated things, but there's nothing that's missing. And take a note, 4819, because there's a lot of duplicates, but nothing's missing. I'm going to say reload, having removed the new stuff, and we'll see what happens. This should go way down because there will be no duplicates, but there'll be some warnings or missing parts here. And now there's only missing parts, and these are the ones that were not converted, like from 27, these are the ones that were not converted. So there are, 300 of these, but no duplicates. I'll say okay. And what we're going to see is there's some things that are missing, so this label type is missing. That's interesting. I hadn't thought about the actual label. What else? I mean, there's other things that are missing, like this is, for example, one of the things that's missing here. I'll just select this dot. It says shower seat. All right, so what's a shower seat? Well, for handicap purposes or whatever, you can have a seat to sit down while you're washing yourself or being washed by an attendant or something like that. Well, there is no shower seat in the 28 library, in the global library. Why? Well, I guess the international things that they just, you make it out of a slab or something like that. I don't know. In any event, there are some parts that just don't have an equivalent. So in MasterTemplate, what I've typically done, and let me just load back in the library manager, and we'll go back into, so I'll say add, and we'll go back and say I'm in Archicad 28. I'm going to load in the library 28. I think we only can do one at a time. Oh no, maybe I can. MEP and migration libraries here. Okay. So I'm adding those in here. I'll say reload and apply. We probably won't have any missing, but we will have a lot of duplicates. And then these things will return. So, yep, no missing stuff, and there's duplicates here. I'll say okay. And so you can see that shower seat, has come back to life, and it looks like the actual thing, this needs to be brought back to the front there and stuff like that. Okay, and what is this label? This label here is generic label 27. So I'm gonna have to see, I hadn't thought of that. There must be a generic label 28. I don't know that this one is, it's generic. Okay, so years and years ago, when I started having all of these parts in the interactive legends, there were labels that had some specific functions. Like this one says, what's the content of the label? And it says we're going to put in the name of the library part here. So it's the name here, symbol, label, display order. Yeah, so parameter name column, no. So where is it? There it is, show the name there. And of course you could show some other things, like I could say, show the elevation, show the dimensions. So now we can see some other information. So this was a very useful library part, or label part. It could show a variety of different things. But nowadays, I would really, it should be just swapped out for, I'll just demonstrate this. If I go to a generic label, I mean, actually truly basic label for text here. So I say label this. I'm going to have it associated with an element. I'm going to say, let me give the click point, and I'll just say, label this up there And this, oh, object indicator. No, I don't want it to be that. I want it to be a text and auto text there. All right, so okay. All right, so what is this text here? This is what was the last text that I had in the default. It was just 3 dots or 3 asterisks. I'm going to remove that and say I'd like to put in auto text that's going to be the name, library part name. So I'm going to say add. So now it says shower C27. So this is now just a generic label, a text auto text. If I had all of these set up with text auto text, we wouldn't have to swap it. But all of these guys, you know, the generic label 27, I'm going to have to go in and update, which is a pity. But here, actually, in fact, let me just change the size of the text here, because this was 8 points. I'll just say 8 point. This is an interesting thing to test. So say 8 point. Should look the same. Now, if I drop this and then use something else, like let's say let's take this one here. This is grab bar. Okay, so it's picked up there, but I can also, I believe, I can inject it. Let's see. Ah, there it worked. There it worked. Now, looks like this has, oh, there's an extra line. I don't know why that's a line there. And I may have to go in here and just adjust the this here. So now those ones are, you know, are using the generic settings. And this one, it looks like I have to bring this to the front and set it's on top of that. So so having set that up, I will have to go in and just inject into each one of them and then move, you know, possibly the handles around for legibility. If I do it right here, yeah, it actually works there. So now this, yeah, it's just the handle moved a tiny bit. So this is text auto text. So I'm going to go and clean that up. All right, so after you've migrated and swapped these things in, remove the older style library folders, see what's missing. You can always put them back in, you know, and fix things that you've identified that I forgot about that. And ultimately, in MasterTemplate and any template that you create for your own use, you should not rely on older parts unnecessarily. Now remember this shower seat here. Okay, so this shower seat, what I'd like to do is make sure that it's going to be in the embedded library. So what does that mean? And I'm going to sneeze for a second. Well, I think I am. I got that feeling. Yeah, it looks like, I don't know. All right, so if I go to the library manager, what does the embedded library have in it? Well, I have some legacy parts that come from that were in legacy objects. So these are some parts that along the way I found I was referring to, and Graphisoft didn't have them in the library anymore. This profiled sheet one, I don't use it, you know, for actually a sort of plastic or metal sheet in structural purposes, but I use it for a shower curtain. You know, if you think about a shower curtain that you just want to represent with a wavy line. The grease trap, I don't know exactly who needs that or uses it, but we had put it in years ago and they stopped having it in the library. At least I couldn't find it, so I kept this old one. The towel bar, they didn't have one the way that I was used to seeing it, so we saved that. So these are some parts here. There's some older cabinets from 24, because the new cabinet sets in 25 weren't missed some features. So I decided, all right, users may still want to use the 24 cabinets, so I put that in there. So you can put whatever you want in here. You know, there were some old railings that were very useful from ARCHICAD 20 before ARCHICAD 21 introduced a new railing tool. So that's what's included in MasterTemplate. And for 28, I'm going to put that shower seat in there, and other things that we've identified as like, can't find a real equivalent, and you know, I'd like to make sure people have it available. These don't typically add too much size to the file. I mean, it might be 5 or 10 megabytes, but nothing much given current standards. So that's what I'm going to do. Now, how do you add something to the embedded library? Well, it would be great if we could go in and find in, let's say, the ARCHICAD library. Let's see, we have ARCHICAD library 28. And could I find in here, where would shower seats be? Might be under plumbing, and plumbing fixtures, and it might be under shower 27. There's a shower tray, shower door, shower cabin, but not that. I'm not sure. Maybe there's some ADA for disabled folks that are in there. I don't quite know where that's stored. Of course, I could. Yeah, so I could track it down. But typically what I've needed to do, and I'll see, how do we do this? What's the best way to teach it? I've exported the entire library out and then found the part and then dragged it into the embedded library. That's what I've done. But let's just see if well, let's say that I wanted to add one of these things in here. I would have this highlighted. I would say I'm going to save this out, export selected library. This is the folder I've got highlighted. I say export that, and I'll say put it into just my downloads folder, export. And now I'll go here and show you in the downloads. And here's the shower 27. And here are these 3 parts that I just exported. So I could export the entire library and then go look for it just by name, but you can literally just drag this into the window of the embedded library. I can't drag it into this. You can see how this is all gray because that's part of what's called a library, LCF, library container file, but I can drag it into, I go back up to the embedded library, I could, just for fun, I'll go to legacy objects, and even though I don't need the shower tray, I'm just going to drag this up in here, and now that shower tray is in my legacy objects there. And when I say OK, it'll be one more duplicate because of course I did have it in the in the actual library. I'll just say OK, so 4819, let's reload and apply. It should be 4820 now, I think, because I've dragged a copy of one of those in here. So I just need to find that thing, and maybe because I do need to do this anyway, I think what I will do is just export the whole library. That's 4820. Okay, so what I'll do to do this, I'm going to go here and say, okay, let me take the entire ARCHICAD library, and here's the ARCHICAD library 28. With this highlighted, I can say save it out. This is going to save the entire ARCHICAD library 28 out, and I'll put it in my MasterTemplate 28, and I have a folder called Graphisoft Standards, and so this is where I'm going to export it, and it may take a little time, but I don't think it'll take more than 30 seconds. It'll just export that, and then, in fact, that was done in 10 seconds. So now if I go to MasterTemplate AMT 28, Graphisoft Standards, here is this library 28. how big is it? It is almost a gigabyte. That was pretty quick there. And if I do a search for shower seat with a name containing shower seat, see, actually I have it in a bunch of different things. This one being in toilet, bath, and laundry accessories and something or another. So actually, I'm just going to go now and go back to the embedded library and say in the legacy objects, when I'm creating this, let me get rid of the shower tray. I don't think we need that. And then I will go grab the shower seat 27 in there. And now that is being saved. And of course, right now it will still be a duplicate, but when I remove the main 27 library, this part will be available. So Paul says, there's a curtain object that works pretty well. Okay, thank you. And Paul says, I missed the grease trap. And Ray says, toilet accessories. Okay, so anyway, I have found that, and I'll check out the curtain object because I may not need that. I think if we look in, do I have, where was I using it? It was, where was it? Where do I have a bathtub? Oh, here. Yeah, so the part that I used it for is this little squiggly thing is the profile sheet, you know, and so it looks like the beginnings of a type of shower curtain that you'd pull out there. If we look at it in 3D, you can see what it's doing. So we look and say curtain, I mean, search for curtain here. And okay, so this is the curtain through 27. This is a new version of the curtain here. Okay, well, yeah, can you have it only one side? Double curtain, no, I'll say single, okay. And top box there, you know, turn that off maybe, or turn it on and pay attention to that. And what percent there. So yeah, what is the representation? Let's see, representation surfaces. Okay, I don't want it to be this color blue. No, I want it to be translucent. So I had it be, what would it be? I think I do glass frosted, I think could be nice, or I don't know, something like that. Yeah, you can see that color there. Curtain 1, curtain 2. Oh, it's this one then here. So I'm not sure whether glass would be the right thing or if they have a fabric that would be translucent, but let's say glass frosted. There we go. Okay, and then I would need the top, the box here. Maybe I'm going to make this as a chrome. That'll finish chrome. Okay, so that's the box. It's hard to tell there. Maybe it's the contour pen. Let's make this contour pen a light gray. Yeah, okay. So, and I'm not sure whether you can make the box. What's the, it's the top box here. I don't know, probably good enough for now. So the representation on the plan wasn't that necessary, but let me just copy this. And here's a little trick. I want to undo and compare this. So I'm going to undo, and then I copy that. I'm going to paste this in. So now I've got these two side by side like that. And let's just take a look at this and see how they compare. Not that it's really critical, but just out of curiosity. So show marquee in 3D. All right, so here is what I had. Ooh, a little rusted, interesting. A rusted pole. And of course I could turn off this top thing. I'm not sure if you have controls for that, but that looks actually quite nice there. So if we were to take this and change, can I change the, take this, take it down to the same height. Ooh, no, that's, I guess, the size of the box there. So let's just take the overall height down to 5 feet. There's something like that. Turn off the box. Okay, so we have a pipe, and yeah, that looks pretty nice. I guess I have 2 curtains there, so I don't want a second one necessarily. Number of rows, we'll just say 1 there. Yeah, that's good. I take that. So get rid of this and drag this and put it under there. You know, maybe have to adjust it. Not quite sure why it's offset. So that's the curtain, and drag that like that. And okay, you know, something like that is more than good enough to represent that. And look, you can see through it and see the fixtures behind. But this looks odd. Why the heck is that? What is going on here? That is shower bar. 3D, the surfaces, masonry. Oh, that is weird. Okay, so how did that happen? I don't know, but probably no one ever pays attention to it. Let's just do chrome here. And yeah, that's now much better. Oh, look at this one as well. And I have no idea when that changed, when that lost track of the surface here. So we're just gonna do chrome for that. Okay, so there you have a few little tweaks. Thank you for that, Paul. Let me open up your line, Paul, in case you have any other comments. I always like contributions like that. So let's say save this. So Paul, any other?
No, it was mostly what I just bumped into that when I was looking for it the other day, and was kind of happy just to be able to have a slider to adjust the width of it, and the 2-piece thing all tied together. The plan view needs, I missed the part about, is that your plan view there that we're looking at the wavy line?
Yeah, and so clearly I want it to be closer to this wall and not that, so I'm going to go and in this case I can mirror, or let's say mirror it across this, and now it's going to be on that side. And if I wanted this to be behind the other stuff, then I might take this so display order, bring to front, and I don't know what else. Oh, this is open like here. So can we stretch this like that? Oh, interesting. So this is a percentage of that. So but maybe I can change it so it's not the plan representation, the background fill here, fill background pen. Yeah, this is white. I want it to be transparent. Perhaps let's just see that. Yeah, now we can see, now this is floating above it. So, and probably the 3D. Yeah, now the curtain is at least back on that wall there. So ultimately, when you create these quick rooms, you'll want to take something from a real project, so you won't have those issues like this, but just make it so that the next time you grab these things and put them into a project and you can adjust them, you have a minimum of work to do. Which brings me back to the general principle of the templates, which I didn't really get into other than talking about layers. I was saying, hey, in the standard template that they used to have, you definitely had to add a bunch of layers because it just didn't have enough and you had to add a bunch of wall types, and you had to add a bunch of other things to be functional. If you think about how can you be efficient in any endeavor in life, anytime you can leverage your work, do it once and reuse it, it will be helpful. In a template, add in all the stuff that you would regularly need and have it available so that you don't have to create new wall types. They're just there. Now, there'll be exceptions, but if 90% of the time, or 95% or 99%, you have what you need, it'll be standardized. It'll have the same look and feel. You won't have differences. Well, in this project, we did it with this line type. That's a thicker line than this project. Whatever inconsistencies. You'll have standard naming for whether it's library parts or wall types, etc. It'll be easier to find. You can have it in folder structure, so you know where it is. So just think about how to organize your workplace in Archicad so that you have, it's easy to find things, and they, as much as possible, they're done ahead of time. Now, you risk, of course, the possibility that your file gets very heavy even before you start working, like MasterTemplate with all of the structural stuff that I've got, and I haven't demonstrated, I've only demonstrated a small fraction of it. MasterTemplate is something like 100 megabytes, which in the old days was like, oh my God, that's huge. That's as big as, a commercial project or something like that. Nowadays, projects can be 200, 500 megabytes, even a gigabyte, and they generally function just fine. And in fact, much of the stuff is not even being looked at unless you need it. But that's a general principle of any type of template, is put in everything that you think you might use on a regular basis. Now, you can always delete stuff in a real project. Oh, we don't need all of these wall types, but it probably doesn't save much time or effort because they can just be in a folder and you're not even looking at the metal walls because you're doing timber framing. All right, so let's just see if there are some other comments. All right, Patrick says, I need to go, but I saw how to do this earlier. Good session. All right, so we are at the 2-hour mark. I did want to make an offer for all of you. Any of you who thought, you know what, I didn't really go into all of these notes here, but any of you who thought, you know what, Eric's a pretty smart guy, that template looks interesting, maybe it'll save me time. Well, I'm going to be, I'm offering the opportunity to buy MasterTemplate for a discount between now and the end of the year. You go to bobrow.com/buy-AMT, that stands for Archicad MasterTemplate 28. Or if you have an earlier version of MasterTemplate and you want to upgrade for 97, then bobrow.com/upgrade-AMT 28. So that'll open up that. If I click on this, you can see that it's normally $397, and then there's a discount, $297. I will be, shipping our MasterTemplate 28. I'm aiming for it, by the end of the month. So that would be next week, Thanksgiving weekend, maybe before, and maybe the US version comes out, and then the next week, the international version. Now, if you simply want to continue using MasterTemplate, if you have that, or any template, and you just want to use it in 28, you can literally load it in, say migrate libraries, and work with it. It will function. But if you want to have all of the library parts updated when you start new projects, if you want to have it set up for the keynotes, other new features, then it's well worth your time to get something that's already been reworked, and you don't have to do that. So let's see if there's any final questions since we're at the 2-hour mark here. So we have 38 people still on the line. So 2/3 of you are still here. I think we had 50 odd people earlier. So let's see if there's any comments. Jack says, great, I was just going to ask about version 28 master template. All right, so that's my plan. I've been very busy with things. Jack is actually also in our Architect Marketing Institute program. Let me just actually open up your line here, Jack, since we've gotten to know each other a little bit over the years as well as recently. So how are you doing, Jack?
Yeah, very good. So again, as always, very instructive today, and new tips on moving more efficiently. I appreciate that. And so just go to the website to purchase this.
Well, that link that I just gave you, I'll pop it in to here as a response by MT. Let's see, Master Template 28. Just put in the link here. Let's see. So it's Bobrow. Let me put it on screen. So, but then I'll. So here you can see this, but I'll put it in case that if you just want to click the link now.
Yeah.
Slash MT28. I'll send that here, and then I'm going to upgrade. For those of you who already have Master Template, you're eligible for the reduced price.
This must have taken weeks to get this together.
Definitely was some exploration to figure out what's going on, what's the best way to handle these things. It's always well, I wouldn't say a moving target, but it's always an interesting thing to just say, all right, what have they changed? What do I need to accommodate? You know,
Yeah.
and in this case, it was tedious and time consuming. And I want to thank Ray Kelly for volunteering. You know, Ray has been in my Archicad coaching program for a while, and I've given him a lot of help on a lot of different project questions. And so he said, hey, I have a little extra time. I'm happy to just help you do some of this grunt work. And so he took quite a few hours doing.
Yeah.
So I want to thank Ray on that. Anyway, so you have some links there if you do want to get Master Template. And Martin Kelly, thank you so much. To learn each time, I only dabble with Archicad, but would like to learn more. So Martin, if you'd like to get in touch with me, I do have, and for all of you, if you'd like to learn more, if you'd like to get my help working with Archicad, there are two different things that you can do. One is you can join my Archicad coaching program, and that link I'll just put in here. So I might as well do this. So Archicad coaching program, and this is $47 per month or $297 per year. And you can go to archicadtraining.com/coaching. And then my best practices, Archicad best practices 2020 course. That's when it was started, and that's I think $997, and that is just archicadtraining.com. And a year-end thing, maybe I'll discount that a bit too if someone wants that. So that has let's say a very extensive library of Archicad training videos, organized very carefully the way I think about conceptual design and design development and setting up project files and working with site topography and just all the different things that say handle, I'm going to say 80–90% of what your workflow is. There's always some things that aren't included, and that's why the coaching program exists, is for people to say, you know what, I need to have a schedule that does this. Oh, okay, let's explore that. Let's define what you need and help you to make it. So those are all some links there. So Martin, if you want to go deeper, I'd be happy to help you. So Kevin says, thanks for the informative presentation on the Archicad 28 library. Yeah, it it's a lot to, at least to understand and know your options. So I'll finish up. Thank you all for joining me. Let me know how I can help you if you do want to reach me. So to reach me, email support@bobrow.com. Okay, so that's best way to reach me. If you don't have my personal number, I'm not going to post that, but some of you have my personal number. But yeah, just email support@bobrow.com, and certainly I will try to respond in a timely manner. Can't always guarantee that. It may take a few days, but I do love helping people. And if you have a question that I can help you with, just let me know. All right, take care, everybody. Be well.